Welcome back to the Brute podcast. It's been a little bit of time, a little hiatus, but nevertheless, we are back, and I'm joined with our CEO, Matt Torres, and our director and head of remote programming, Mr. El Senouvor. Gentlemen, it's good to have you.
Nice to be back.
Yeah, man. We just finished with quarterfinals, and it's been quite at the recording of this conversation, it's been quite the last 24 hours. We've had some major penalties in the CrossFit world that have really impacted some of the most public and at least public facing CrossFitters, and it's interesting to me. We're talking about workout one for those listening. Workout one, there's been many major penalties that have affected several CrossFit athletes. And gentlemen, that's kind of where I want to start today, is maybe one step back, just general thoughts on the quarterfinals programming and what we've seen so far in terms of the workouts and events this season. Matt, we'll start with you.
I think as a whole, I really liked the programming for quarterfinals. The pieces within can be adjusted a little bit, and I think that's what we're starting to see with the major penalties coming down from CrossFit HQ. As far as, like, for example, the step ups, it's probably clear to a lot of people that they should have done a box step over, and it would have created the same type of limitation, if you will, for that type of workout. But all in all, I thought the workouts were really good. And for my athletes specifically, I really liked how they did well on some of the things that we've really been targeting this year, and they were really challenged in ways that we need to be better prepared for next year's quarterfinals.
El, did you think, I mean, being really nerdy, right? So you've, traditional CrossFit, MGW, monostructural weightlifting, gymnastics. Did you think we were going to see two workouts that we had one all G workout, and then we had one all W workout? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think before the season started and as more information came out about the Open, there was a lot of noise out there about what type of movements are they going to program. Is it going to be watered down? So a lot of people expected the workouts to be kind of lower quality, similar to the Open, but I think they honestly did a really good job. Seeing rope climbs was probably shocking to a lot of people. Seeing the barbell, like a battery workout program, was probably something no one expected. Some people probably hoped it was a little bit heavier, but I think in general, they kind of stuck to the same structure they've been doing every year, which is gymnastics, endurance, an aerobic capacity testing workout, a mixed modal test, which this year was a little bit different with having intervals in there. And then they had their battery workout that they have every year, right? So I wasn't quite shocked by it. It's the same stuff that we've been preparing for. And it kind of stuck to the script. So this wasn't new or anything. It was just what was programmed was probably a little bit more complex than people expected.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about a lot of people wished it was heavier. I think I shared this with Matt. I heard Adrian Bosman on a podcast talk about that originally that workout, and we're talking about the workout for those listening, the all barbell workout that El was referencing. That workout originally was tested with the last bar ending for 275 for the men. And they decided that ultimately 245 would get the job done. And that's obviously where we landed. But it's interesting to think how that would have changed, or maybe not, the girls and guys at the very top of that particular workout.
I don't think it would have mattered. I still think Amanda Barnhart would have won and Kelsey Keel would have done well. Because usually the stronger athletes tend to have an advantage, as in the percentage that they're working at is a little bit lower. So even if their battery isn't great, they're still able to do a little bit better than everyone else. the weights that they chose, I honestly think was like the right amount because it allowed the regular class people to still have a chance to like get to that last bar, have an opportunity to like compete, but also at the top of the leaderboard, it just became about fitness. For a lot of people, it was more about fitness than the load was heavy. So it was more of a muscle endurance / battery workout for most people, especially if you were in that top 40.
Matt, you obviously coach mostly top end games athletes. I mean, people are very familiar with guys like Dallin Pepper, James Sprague, or Fisa Gaffi, or now Rebecca Vittison at this point. I'm curious, how do you go about coaching, programming, training, whatever you want to call it, for that quarterfinal level? Because I hear a lot of people say, I hear these people talk about, these coaches talk about, you should have a rhyme and reason for the place you are in your season, whether it's open training, quarterfinal training, etc. How do you tend to break that down in your mind, when it comes to actually writing the programming pen to paper, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. Well, typically it starts off with, for me, understanding what was the biggest obstacle in the way for the athlete that you're talking to. So, if you're talking to a quarterfinal athlete and they say, I want to improve in quarterfinals, I have a goal to reach semifinals in X amount of time. From there, I start to basically create a program that is going to get them better developed at quarterfinals. I typically start in asking myself one of two questions. Are they more anaerobic or are they more aerobic? And then from there, if whichever one they are, we program to develop them in the other one. So if, let's say we get an athlete that is a weightlifter, probably high anaerobic development, strong, powerful, probably prefers fast workouts like a 12-9-6 of some sort. I typically start to prioritize aerobic, right? So, typically, but not always, when we see quarterfinal workouts, a little bit more challenging than the open, typically a little bit heavier barbell is what we've seen in the past. And we can really only go with what we've seen in the past. And that helps develop out my season as far as what their weights will look like, what their skills will look like, what type of goals we need to be hitting for their strengths, what type of goals we need to be hitting for their aerobic stuff, because we know that we've seen rowing and we've seen running, and now we get more and more, I would say, options getting thrown out there, box step overs or box step ups from this past year. I believe it's been a while since we've seen wall balls come back in again during quarterfinals. So using all that information, and just, again, creating as much simplicity in programming as possible is vital. The simpler you can make the things, the easier it's going to be for everyone, right? We have, all three of us are on here and we've worked with a whole bunch of levels of athletes. It does not need to be made to be like, you don't need a key or a dictionary or the almanac of weightlifting to get someone fitter in order to complete this type of programming. So that's usually my basic rundown.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because as I've taken on more clients and helped more people bridge that gap from where they are to where they want to be, what I find and what I hear myself repeating over and over to these folks is that these specific weaknesses, these specific challenges require very specific solutions, meaning a broad stroke of the pen or brush isn't necessarily going to get them to where it is that they want. And what I found is the higher you go and the more incremental the gain is, quite frankly, the more difficult it is to make that progress. And so it's very interesting to me that as you start to break it down into, like, you almost laid out kind of a systematic approach of like what you kind of go through in your head. It's interesting to me to hear the athlete's perspective, because oftentimes it's just, well, I'm training, 5 hours a day, so I must be getting better because hard work, no pun intended, always pays off. And it's like, I hate to break this to you, my friend. It doesn't. Doing the wrong things aren't, even if it's really hard, doing hard things for the sake of doing hard things doesn't mean that you're going to get better, And so it's cool to hear that there's a very specific approach in the way that you go about what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, this year was weird because it was probably the first year where I had a little bit of trouble trying to understand like what the limitation is. So you watch an athlete do a workout, they do the workout, and you're like, okay, that's a home run. Like she just crushed that. And then you hear other people's times and you're like, how do I get this athlete that was moving super fast, taking no breaks, shave 30 seconds off their time? And then that's kind of like that's the change that you need to find is how do I get them to do this workout 30 seconds faster when they're already moving pretty fast? And I think if you just go back and you say, okay, they need to do more burpees, it's like that can't possibly be the answer, right? So it's like finding the specific answer. Did you slow down at this mark? Did you break up your wall balls? Okay, can we try not breaking up the wall balls? Did you step up on your burpees? Can we try not stepping up on your burpees? So I agree 100% that the closer you are to the top and you're trying to like make those small changes, you have to have a coach that can, one, understand what your limitations are and at least be able to get the answer out of you for like what you thought your limitations were, and then bridge that gap so that you can make that progress.
Hearing you say that, yeah. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Just biting off of what Al just said, it reminds me of, you have two athletes doing the workout carrying 150 wall balls for time. Athlete one, their quads are blowing up. Athlete two is breathing hard, but their quads are fine. Do they get the same workout, or do they get different workouts to help them with their breathing, and the other one workouts to help them improve their quad endurance or lactic acid fatigue? We don't know which one it is, but that is like the simple question to ask yourself is, which one are you in this scenario, and is that a one size fit all program?
I'm curious, El, because so this year in particular, you've taken on a few more athletes on site, most notably Kelsey Keel, right, as she makes her individual return to competition. I'm curious because you outlined what seemed like a very specific situation, and maybe that wasn't about her, and that's okay if it wasn't, but I'm curious if there maybe is an anecdote that comes to mind that maybe you could share regarding a time like that, because I what you outlined was this need for specificity, right? And I think a lot of people just think, well, if I work out hard enough, I'll fix it. And what I heard you say is it's not about working out harder. Like a lot of the times, like at the top, it's really not about harder. It's about a lot smarter and more intentional. I'm curious if you have something that comes to mind that stands out.
Yeah, the easiest example I can give is about, I think 2-3 months ago, Kelsey had this testing piece that I gave to a few of my other athletes, and it was the EMOM to failure of like front squats and burpees. And she didn't quite finish the EMOM. She was very far from finishing the EMOM, right? So immediately it was, okay, this is probably going to be something we need to fix. Understanding what the limitation was for her, it was her breathing. And then she had to basically put 6 to 8 weeks of work on that specific skill just in order to like pass that test, right? And how that correlates to quarterfinals, the quarterfinals test was wall balls and burpees. And I'm sure a lot of people weren't expecting her to finish that workout. And I think that's the level of like attention and detail that we have to put in, because I could have simply just went do more burpees and this will get better. But I don't think that's quite the answer, because we've done more burpees in the past and it hasn't yielded the same results.
Mm. Yeah. It's like doing more doesn't equal, and I know this isn't correct grammar, but more doesn't equal more betterer, right? Like in a
Yeah,
nutshell,
for sure.
right? That's
For
so
sure.
interesting.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's interesting, Matt, as Elle describes this process, and I know you obviously have on-site athletes as well. It's interesting to hear some nuances, if you will, between your approaches, and from being there in person with you from time to time. It's been really cool to watch, and a lot of people may not think this. It's been really cool for me to watch Dallin or someone start a workout and you stop them and you're like, no. Like this isn't the right stimulus, or actually we need to do this. Most people have never even thought about stopping a workout once they started, or maybe they have, but not for the reasons that you've stopped a workout. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your approach in person, specifically with the attention to detail that Elle was just describing.
Yeah. So with the workouts that we write, there's a lot of intention behind it. In order to elicit a specific limiter and to progress that limiter, we need to control things like weight, like rest, like skills, volume. And if I don't see it done on the first set, or if I don't see it done, let's say after watching it 3 or 4 times on a training piece, then I have to have that conversation with my athlete, whether it's right then and there for right after set one or immediately after, when I'm trying to pick their brain and understand, what was it and why was it? Because I can get that information and actually write out the next week's progression very quickly to make sure that I hit that exact stimulus that I'm looking for a proper progression. And it's something that, an example here is like Dallin's been working with me since he was 15, 16 years old. So it's 6 years now. I don't even have to ask him questions anymore. He knows exactly where my mind is. And so when he's doing something, he'll come right up to me. He's like, hey, I'm thinking this, and that. Do you want me to put focus on unbroken chest to bar? Do you want me to put focus on moving fast on burpees? Right, of this example workout? And I can actually tell him right then and there, it's like, we're going to put all the intention on unbroken chest to bars. I realize if we do that, then this is probably gonna have to move a little bit slower, but then we can speed up the pace on the burpees, right? And I want to see whatever other components are on there move at a steady pace, but move faster on these two. Now, the thing with Dallin is he can take that and see the intention of it and realize that when there's a workout, an event that comes up, it does not mean that he gets to go unbroken chest to bar because he can, right? It doesn't mean he gets to go 50 unbroken chest to bars. It just means that he's now developed the capacity to hit a large set of unbroken while under whatever I want to add in there, aerobic fatigue, muscle fatigue, skill, mental fatigue, whatever the case may be. If it shows up in an event. Again, it takes a very special athlete and it takes a lot of understanding, and he truly does understand that, right? Because I can mention another athlete where there's not as much understanding, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just have to put more intention into, telling them, hey, this is how it needs to be done. I realize we started it doing this way. We're going to bring the reps down. We're going to bring the weight up. And we're going to continue moving this thing forward. And it gets adjusted, it gets done, usually during their rest time, whether it's a minute, 30 seconds, or 5 minutes, and then they're off again.
It's interesting to me, and I've heard you say this at camps as well during lectures. It's like if an athlete asks their coach, hey, what's the intention behind what it is that we're doing? And that coach can't give a very clear and concise answer. You should be very worried as an athlete. Should be very worried. A mentor of mine said this to me one time, and I'll never forget it. He said, if you can't explain it simply, you simply don't understand. And I thought that was a really cool quote. And I think sometimes it's like when people try to explain aerobic capacity and they give you, it's like, it's your engine, it's your ability to breathe. And they name all these things and you're like, you don't know what you're talking about. You just say things. that you've heard on Instagram, and you're, no offense, you're an internet coach. Stop moonlighting, be a professional. I mean, our space is filled with that, unfortunately. And so to hear you speak to this level of detail of what it takes to be not good, but elite at this sport, I think for a lot of people, it's going to be eye-opening, because I know when I saw it for the first time, I was like, oh, this is how this is done.
Yeah. I have this thought. I heard someone that actually programs for people say out loud to someone else, I happen to be standing there, when I don't know what to do, I'll just use ChatGPT. And I'm like, wait a second. Are you telling me this is the program you're selling to people? That's what we're doing now? We're just, and I don't know, maybe there are other people out there that utilize the same process of using ChatGPT to make a fun workout. And I think there are good instances. For example, I made some fun workouts during this floating week, I would call it, when we're like, the competition finishes like kind of in the middle of the week, and you don't want to start a cycle on like a Wednesday,
exactly,
right? So you're just floating to get to a Monday type of deal. And I put fun workouts in there because I don't want them stressing out about, training starting up already, and there's no official cycle start date, and it's not starting on a Friday, and it's not starting on a Monday. So yeah, I did make fun workouts, but it's just interesting to me that people use ChatGPT a lot more often than we think, and call that a successful program.
I'm curious. That brings up a really good point. Successful program. El, could you define successful program? And I don't mean that in a rhetorical manner. I'm genuinely curious. Like, what makes a program successful in your estimation?
For me, a successful program accomplishes what you're trying to accomplish with it, right? So whatever the goal you set when starting the program, if you're able to make steps or reach that goal, then it's successful. I think we go a little bit more specific than that, as in we look for specific goals when we're writing progressions, when we're doing cycles, right? So each cycle is going to have a different intent and a different goal. For me, if an athlete gets better, but they didn't get better how I thought they were going to get better, I wouldn't say it's successful, right? Because when we write things with a specific intent, we need that intent to be resolved, or the problem to be resolved, and that goal to be accomplished. Otherwise, we're kind of missing the mark.
I appreciate that response, because what you started with was that it accomplishes the goal that you set forward. And I think so many people don't even set that goal. So how can it be successful if you don't set the goal? Let me say it this way. How can you improve something you don't measure?
Right.
I would say if you're not measuring anything in your program, it's unsuccessful.
Yeah, and
y'all disagree?
As I'm going
tell me I'm crazy.
As I'm going through the mentorship with all of our coaches, one of the kind of hurdles that we've gone through as they're learning and they're having to implement it with their own clients now is them putting athletes through testing, because it's just so easy to just have a conversation and start designing. And I have to kind of harp on them about, no, you can't guess. You have to
you have to assess.
figure out why. Yeah, exactly. And you'd be shocked how many coaches out there are not doing testing, not assessing their clients, and they're just kind of going from a quarterfinals leaderboard, which is fine. We do that too. We see helpful. A workout that might have been a weakness, and we'll build a progression around that. But that can't be the only thing you're doing.
Yeah, I don't want to turn this into a crap on other people, but I this week I had an athlete who, this person, I'm not going to say male or female, but because maybe people could figure it out, but it was a person that a couple years ago was very close to making the CrossFit Games. Okay, they were a couple spots out, and they were with a coach in the space that is everyone would know. Everyone would know. And I was like, so like, tell me about your experience. What did you like? What did you dislike? Tell me about the programming. What did it look like? And I was blown away when this person started to talk and explain that process to me, because it was so foreign. Not because I disagreed with it, not because I thought it was stupid, because it was foreign to me. It wasn't the way that it wasn't our process, our mode of operating, and it was just random. Like, it was literally random. There was no testing, there was no anything. And I didn't realize that was as rampant as it was until I had people come and actually explain this was their experience. And so I think for us, I feel like as a company, as Brute, what we're trying to do is not only provide that, but be a place that's professional, like be professional coaches. And I don't see that a lot in the space, Matt. I mean, especially hearing what you just outlined.
Yeah, I think one way that we don't quite see it in the space is, and this term just came to me a little bit ago, maybe like a couple months ago, is this templated individualized program. This was something that was brought to my attention by another athlete that came from a different company.
Yeah.
And he kept asking me the same question. He's like, is this going to be for me? Like, in different ways. I'm like, okay, I don't know how to make this more clear to you that if I'm going to be working with you, then I'm writing your program. And it hit me that this is actually something that's happening frequently. And what I'm speaking on is a company that uses their templated program that they sell for, let's call it like $30, and they attach a coach to it. They use the same template and then switch up a couple things here and there so that it fits the athlete better, right? And that's the issue, is that it fits the athlete better. It is okay to use a template or what we would call a skeleton, right? And that is, we've designed this skeleton. So on Mondays, you're going to be doing a weightlifting piece, and you're going to follow a weightlifting battery piece. And then after that, you're going to do an accessory piece. And then after that, we're going to do a longer, let's call it MAP 7 piece. That's a skeleton. And then we throw in the pieces in there, right? That's much different. That, yes, we use that. And there's a lot of other companies that do a great job using that as well. And so that is just one way that I have seen people that I have meetings with and I sign up as clients that tell me, hey, like, this is what's going on. And are you guys the same? Are you guys different? And, it's interesting. We all do things differently in the way we interpret our foundation and our base. We all come from an OPEX or a training think tank, I would say, like learning, like brain, and how I write a certain training piece. If you were to be given the same question, you would probably write a little bit different. And I think that's okay. That's what makes our brains so unique, is we have the ability to stick people with the proper coaches that we know would be best fit. And it's one thing that I'm really proud about with this company.
It's kind of what you're describing is this like human centric approach, right? It's like every human is different, right? And so that process of being able to, investigate their needs, to ideate different options, and then ultimately develop a plan that's going to actually meet them where they are. And I'm not sure the words that you use, but I loved it. Individual template. Is that what you use? Was that the terminology? I'm going to start using that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I can understand why companies would want to lean towards individualized template, as I'm sure you guys can as well. And I think Al can speak to this much better than I can because of how many athletes he trains. That is an easy way of doing it, but it's also, I believe, an easy way to get a lot of turnover and a lot of frustration. And Al I'm sure speaks about it a lot during his mentorship is how does he handle, 55, 65 plus clients? Because it is really simple to just be like, boom, templated, individualized, and it's really not that. It does take a certain human to have systems in place that work very well in holding himself at a very high standard for work. Something that I'm certainly not capable of doing, but it takes a very special coach to do that.
El, so we've mentioned this mentorship a few times. I feel like we should at least give a brief description of what this is, so people have some level of understanding, maybe, and even if they want to, if they even like what we're saying too, to be able to figure out how maybe they can be a part of it next time.
Yeah, the way to coach 60 to 65 people is to get like 5 to 6 hours of sleep, skip many meals, and then not have a lot of distractions, but it is doable. The mentorship is essentially like, I don't quite have the systems yet. Like a lot of the information I'm using for the mentorship is taken from all the resources I've used over the years to learn myself, right? So the way we approach it is by doing case studies, right? Getting in the thick of it, getting these coaches to program and trying to teach them the systems that I use to coach that many athletes. They may not quite be there yet as far as like how many clients they have, but the goal is for them to like one day get there. So what we do is we take an athlete, we create avatars, and then basically they have to, so essentially they learn how to write testing based on the client. They'll learn how to read those testing metrics, how to create skeletons, and then eventually how to program, and then how to create progressions based on the results that you see. And our mentorship is a little bit different, as in we're using like real people with real information on the leaderboard, like real clients that I have. I think this year we used Danielle Brandon and Dolan Pepper, right? And they're getting to like write programming for essentially very high level athletes, and they're getting a coach who does it to essentially look at it and go, maybe that's not quite the right idea, but you're on the right track. This is wrong. Don't ever do that. Or this is great. Keep that, right? And a lot of our coaches have gone through a similar process, maybe not directly like a mentorship, whether it was like indirect or direct. And I think it allows us to like kind of vet who comes and works for the company, because we get to see like what they're capable of before they even apply for a job, right? And they already have like this body of work out there. But because it is so specific and like more close knit, it is limited to a small amount of people. So we're only going to run it twice a year, and it runs for about 8 weeks. And last time we sold out in 3 days. I think we already have like our wait list filled up. So I don't even think that people will have that opportunity, but they can still sign up for the wait list in case anybody drops out.
That's insane. That is awesome. The wait list is filled up. That's so cool. It tells me you're doing a good job. I can attest to that.
I hope so.
Matt, we recently, the company Brute recently went through a rebrand, and I was on a potential client call, like an intro call that we have with all of our prospective clients, and I always ask the same question. I just say, hey, just for my knowledge, just to help me out, what led you to Brute? And he said the messaging. And he goes, I was like, what do you mean? Like the messaging. I don't like what message resonated, basically, is what I asked him. And he said the message that, like, so for context, he was an age group athlete, I believe 40 to 44. And he said, I felt like I was going to get the attention that I needed to be able to make the next step. I'm curious, like, in your mind, when you were sitting down meeting with Floro, who helped design a lot of the aesthetics that people are seeing, what vision did you have in mind and like at that time when you were originally sitting down and going, hey, this is what I think this is going to look like, or what I want it to look like?
Mhm. I think the big thing was, what was the foundation that led us to coach high-level athletes? What are the things that were tried and true that we know works? And all of us are coaches in some capacity, the employees. We even have an employee, Kate, that coaches group classes, right? And she's our head admin. And so essentially the question became, what is our foundation and how do we verbalize that? How do we communicate that in a way that we know that we utilize every single day as a coach? Whether we are coaching remote athletes or whether we're coaching some of the best athletes in the world inside the gym. And it really came down to that is, the communication, the two-way street, the communication, building a program that is around the athlete's needs and limiters, I would say as well, and being able to have that two-way street with our athletes so that they feel like their needs are getting met.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm curious, El, have you, as you've been on these calls, outside of people going, hey, the look is different, like it looks different, right? We're not posting Oprah quotes every day, but outside of that, any thoughts or any feedback on that? I'm asking, I'm genuinely curious because I've gotten feedback and I'm curious if you have too.
I think it's always cool to me to hear where people have heard of Brute. And I think some of the coolest things is when people say that Brute is all over the place. Because one of our biggest things on the business side of things is we needed a stronger brand presence than what we had in years prior. So when I hear things like that, it's really cool. And it shows me that things are heading in the right direction, even though it's not anywhere in a place where we know we want to be. That vision is still out there of our goals. And, as far as like the communication and how we say things, whatever, if you are, and I think this is kind of anything in general, whether it's HWPO or underdogs or proven, if that's kind of your thought and your mentality, let's say underdogs, for example, right, it's in the word, it's in the way they say it, underdogs, right? We can all describe an underdog story. If that's how you see yourself, you're probably going to lean towards that, and the way we set up our brand and our messaging and our communication is, hey, we're here for you, no matter where you are in your, your athletic journey. No matter where it is, we're going to get you better than who you are today. And here's the way that we plan on doing it, and the way that we've done it with professional athletes, the way that we've done it with our templated program and our communities, and how we continue to do it with everything that we offer. So I'm like, it's cool, and when we see that it connects with people.
El, as we kind of look forward and begin to ultimately look forward to the next stage of competition, right? Semifinals. What do you hope to see? So 2 questions. What do you hope to see? And then what do you think we'll see?
I was actually talking to one of my athletes about that. What I hope to see is for all the semis to have all the same workouts, instead of letting them operate as their own and then having the 2 CrossFit sanctioned or CrossFit written events. I think it would be really cool if they all had the same workouts similar to last year, even though they're back to being their own individual comps. What I think we'll see is, I think all the semis will have different workouts, except for maybe 1 or 2. But that's just me guessing because it seems like they'll have like their own things that they like to program, their own people that they like to use for programming. But essentially, what I want from the athlete standpoint is to get to showcase what they can do, right? Sometimes the programming is a little too complex, and it kind of takes away from what the athletes can do. And there's a lot of like learning that happens on the fly. And if you're a really good athlete, you can adapt and showcase what you have under those circumstances. But a lot of the times, it's also really good to just know that, hey, this is just fitness, and I can just go out there and be free and compete. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping for. We'll see.
Yeah, I think the days of regionals where everyone does the same 5-6 workouts is so underrated. If we were doing that game overrated or underrated, it's 100% underrated. I think getting back to the same several workouts is the best thing that we could do for a very difficult spectator sport. Incredibly difficult. But if you've heard the same workout 6 times, you're like, oh yeah, I've heard that the first 2 weeks. I understand it now. You know, I've never really understood that, but that's a soapbox for later.
Really, I would like for them to like release the workouts like a year ahead, and let's see who has the best programming and who's going to win. I guarantee you who wins the games would change dramatically if they release the workouts for like 6 months.
Do you really think that? It would
maybe
change
not dramatically. It would change. And you wouldn't have the same winner over and over and over and over. It would change.
I'm going to make an assumption. Correct me if my assumption is incorrect. But based off what you just said, you believe that them releasing it early would put more, we'll call it weight, on a coach's ability and alongside the athlete to program, progress, and adapt to that specific stimulus. Yes?
Yeah, for sure. Because if you look at it, the way you're preparing for the games, like there's very little structure to games training. It's like how much chaos and how much controlled chaos can I create around this athlete's program, and how many different things can I expose them to so that they're somewhat prepared. Like we're not doing progressions of this. Like we're working on specific characteristics that we know might show up similar to like quarterfinals and semis, but like it's a little random in the aspect of like you might do bar muscle ups this week, next week you might do strict muscle ups. It's still upper pulling, but you don't get that same progression. I'm going to do 10 bar muscle ups this week, 14 next week, 18 the following week, right? It's a little bit chaotic from that aspect.
Matt,
I think we'd find that we would have more fan interaction from that as well. You know, they can see what the workouts are. They know what to expect. You know, I think there could be a lot of good to come from that, and also like I also believe safety would be a little bit more. I would guess like insured, you know, secure. It's like I had a conversation with one of the strongmen from Rogue, and we were talking back and forth about programming, like what the strongman programming was versus what our programming was, and I was from the standpoint of we don't know what our programming is, and he was like, "That's absolutely crazy." He's like, "If we don't get what we're doing at least 3 months in advance, I won't be signing up because it's dangerous." You know, he's like, if I have to flip a barrel over a high object, then I need certain training to make sure that those muscles are ready to push my limit there. You know, if I'm doing a carry, I need to make sure that my biceps are strong enough to do that carry. He's like, but if I'm, doing heavy pulls off the ground and there is no heavy pulling in that specific competition, then I'm not even doing appropriate programming for, what I should be doing. So it was interesting to hear that aspect, and I can understand the safety, on their side of things. But I think it is a very interesting point, and I think it would be actually pretty cool to see. It may not go with the grain, but I can tell you right now, every single sport does it. Every single sport is prepared for what they're about to do. And, you know, hate it or love it. I think it would actually make a better all around environment for the sport that we have.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your time jumping on today. This was a really great conversation. I can tell you I'm more enlightened because of it. Any closing thoughts before we jump off? Covered it all. You did a great job.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck for those that have not gotten their quarterfinal scores checked off. They're probably sweating right now. I was sweating seeing some of the things that were changing. You know, if nothing else, figure out where the learning is out of it. You know, there is a learning piece to come from it, and you know, I guess what I'm trying to say here is it's not all CrossFit's fault, right? And you know, I'm getting a handful of messages of what people should be doing. Number one, set up multiple cameras. You know, the sooner you can, if you're unsure of something, the sooner you can reach out to CrossFit, the better. Even if their answers are vague as often as they are, at least they see that you're actually trying. You know, if you're just thinking to yourself like, whatever, you know, and then it could be too late, you know, and if they don't see that you're not actually trying, they may not be lenient. And it's already a very strict way of how they do things. And we all know that once they make up their mind, that's probably what is going to be happening from that point moving forward. And the season might come to a close at a much faster time than what you're anticipating.
Just one thought. I do think, so, you know, that they created that association of, I think it's called APJ, maybe, Association of Professional Judges or something of the nature. Anyways, the point is it's made up of a bunch of judges that are very high level judges that, you know, judge at the CrossFit Games every year, L3s, L4, right? I mean, these people are really great at what they do, the top end of what they do. They you know, they're at Rogue. Anyways, point being is when I see these athletes that are getting dinged, penalized, major, not minor, but major penalties, and those judges happen to also be their judges, I do think it's a systematic issue, and not from a he said, she said, or I viewed it this way, you viewed it this way, but I think there's a systematic issue from the top business-wise that needs to change with CrossFit in the way, whether it's a collective bargaining agreement like many other sports have. But I've said this from the beginning, the professionalization of our sport needs to be sped up by 2x, 3x, 4x. Like, we're lagging in a lot of things. And in my estimation, I think a collective bargaining agreement, whether it's with judges or athletes, will happen probably sooner than later as a result of some of the things that we're seeing, and athletes that, quite frankly, have no recourse, have zero recourse. I think it's a problem for the professionalization, for these people to make a livelihood, which is what we're talking about, because that's how everybody makes money at the end of the day. That's how coaches will make money. That's how the media providers will make money. CrossFit will make money. The athletes will make money, to set up a win-win-win situation. So that is something that I think needs to happen. It's my 2 cents. So, and on that atom bomb that we just dropped, appreciate you all, and we'll do it again soon.
Radio.